Okay, and here we are with tonight's Your Space presentation, Building Friendships. And we've got Sue and Michelle from Ron Joyce Children's Health Center, the Community Education Service, and I'm sure you can hear dogs barking and everything in my background as well. And this is just life today. And I'm just going to hand things over to Sue and Michelle. If anyone has any tech issues or any questions, you can just put them in that private chat box. If you're on a mobile device, when you open up that chat box, it'll go full screen and you should be able to enter your messages that way. Over to you two.
Okay. All right, so welcome everybody. My name is Michelle. I'm a child life specialist and a facilitator at the Ron Joyce Children's Health Center Community Education.
And my name is Sue Kelly, and I am a behavior therapist, and Michelle and I work together as educators in the Community Education Service. So welcome and thank you for coming and joining us tonight.
All right, so we're talking about making and keeping friends, because some of your children might be anxious, so making friends might be difficult. Others are a little more impulsive and are great at connecting with people, but have a hard time keeping those connections. So we're going to go over how to coach your children and help them. Go ahead, Sue.
Okay, so when we think about sort of friendships, we need to look at what is actually the sort of social and emotional development piece that kind of goes along with where your children are functioning at. So it really is about their sense of confidence and their competence, so their ability to be able to reach out and form friendships, and how well they do that, right? So they have to be willing and able to want to make friendships and be able to have the skills to carry it out, to have good relationships with peers and with adults, and getting along with others. So it's about that sort of give and take, the sharing. They have to be able to persist at tasks, right? So they have to have that sort of staying power with sort of working at things in a social context. They have to be able to follow directions, right? So this is important when we're talking about gameplay, whether it be a board game or even, a game of, kicking a ball around and deciding what the rules are, right? Ability to identify and understand and communicate their own emotions, right? So they have to be able to say, this is how I feel in this situation, and not just sort of, sit down in the middle of the field and start to have an emotional breakdown, but they need to be able to identify what are those emotions that they're having at that moment, and being able to manage those strong emotions. So I'm not going to throw the ball at somebody else's head. I'm going to be able to find a way to be able to calm those emotions down. I'm going to be able to turn the volume and the intensity down on the emotions. I've learned maybe some other techniques or ideas to be able to lower that intensity, whether it's breathing or distracting myself somehow. And then there's a piece of that sort of empathy as well. So being able to understand sort of social, in that social context, other people's emotions and the effects that things are having on other people as well, and how sort of some of my behavioral reactions are affecting others. Okay, so there's lots to consider, there's lots going on.
So as parents, we can get frustrated because we're not quite sure why children are struggling. We think they're young, go out and have fun, just play with your sibling, like just do it. It's not that hard, but it is hard. And the reason why some people struggle could be one of these things or all of these things. Your personality, your temperament. If you've got learning deficits, that's struggling. That's because sometimes they look like they're 10, but they're functioning more like a 5-year-old, and they don't fit in with the 10-year-olds. Their age, previous experiences. Some children don't have a lot of exposure to social situations, especially now. So if we don't create those opportunities. They don't have opportunities to practice. Maybe they're those kids that don't get invited to parties and things like that, so it makes it even harder. Um, Sometimes their behavior, like Sue was saying, like you don't have that emotional control. You have a hard time not winning a game, or you're a ball hog, or you calling someone stupid, and it's like, oh, this isn't going very well, so you've got those behavioral and emotional, your emotions make you act a certain way. And even anxiety, children do have anxiety. They don't want to feel judged, and sometimes they act out and they are impulsive, and then they feel bad, and then they feel nervous about being judged. So it just kind of spins. So you could probably look at this list and think, I wonder where my child is struggling. And there's a bunch of things that we're going to check off. So this is a poll so we can understand where you're coming from.
Are you
So
able
Louise,
to make this
Yep.
poll?
I'm just gonna
Pull this up,
switch
Louise.
us over to this one. All right, a poll box should have popped up for you, and you can just click as many of those options as you would like. You might have to scroll down.
So we're focusing on things your child can do, not things that they're struggling with.
Wow. Look at the emotions.
But these are things that they can do, is able to respect the rights of others, understands other people's feelings. So I'm a little confused by the numbers, because these are all skills that someone has that's good at making friends.
So they're able to express their thoughts and feelings, but they don't know how to regulate them. Identify.
Okay, so from this list, it looks like your kids are able to identify and express their thoughts. They're good at saying, or they understand the thoughts and feelings of others. They can identify other people's feelings. They respect the rights of others. They're able to establish and work towards short and long-term goals. And they respond and behave appropriately in different social situations.
So what I'm seeing here from the group is, Michelle, really is that regulation of emotions and that acting on impulse is the problem.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Just
So
so
if
the
there's
group is aware,
or
we
anything
do
that you're
have,
struggling with, if you could write that in the comment box so we understand what you're here
yeah.
for and why you think your child is struggling, so that'll help us a little bit more. So at this point, it just looks like impulse and emotion gets in the way of making friends. But if there's something else, if you could type it in the box.
Introverted, yeah.
Okay, so you've got more of an anxious child.
Yeah. Okay.
Right, and we've got another one here.
Okay. So
So that
I think
makes
before
sense.
before we end off tonight, we'll share with you a few of our other courses that might be really helpful and useful for you guys to explore, because I'm seeing a few of our other topics might be of real interest for you guys, sort of as a future option. But we'll leave that till a little bit later on, okay? So we'll just kind of keep
Mhm.
moving through. Okay. So we're going to use this poll as well for social challenges.
This one is the longer list. You may need to use the scroll bar at the side to get to all the options.
Are you taking questions, Michelle?
I'm just noticing the comments.
Challenges. Just kind of going over all of the numbers here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that real impulsivity, impatience stuff is a real problem, eh?
For sure.
Are we dealing with I'm just kind of throwing this out to the group. You're welcome to answer this in the chat. Are we dealing with a lot of ADHD type behaviors in the group tonight?
It looks like anxiety, and then we've got the other end too.
Yeah, well, I know we've got the anxiety piece. I'm just wondering about the sort of ADHD type behaviors. Yeah, so that awkwardness too, and knowing what to do in social situations. And this has been a very tough year for that, particularly.
Right. Okay. Thank you for
Oh,
that.
yep.
All right, we're going to go on.
So we have five basic sets of skills when we're thinking about, skill sets, like what are those things that our kids need to be able to sort of start to develop. And there are sort of those five key areas. And the first one is self-awareness. And, some of you were pretty good in that area, saying that basically able to identify thoughts and feelings and strengths, recognizing how they influence, one's choices and actions. So it sounded like there was some self-awareness going on. Social awareness is identifying and understanding the thoughts and feelings of others, and it did sound like there was some of that, and appreciating diversity. Kids need to be exposed to diversity in order to be able to understand if they're able to appreciate diversity. So we don't necessarily know if they can appreciate diversity if they're not exposed to it. And then we have the self-management piece, right? So establishing and working towards sort of those smaller short-term goals or more long-term based goals. And this is where things started to get a little bit more vague with you guys in terms of your kids and what they could handle. The emotion piece was a little bit more difficult. Facilitating rather than interfering with the task at hand, right? So the emotions kind of are getting in the way. Responsible decision making. Again, this is where we're starting to see some of those issues arise and challenges in sort of implementing and being able to figure out, well, this situation is causing me a problem. What is it that I'm supposed to do, right? Other kids are being mean to me, or things aren't going right. They're not playing the same way. They're not abiding by the rules. How do I deal with this situation, right? So they're not really sure. This is all part of that, sort of decision making and assuming personal responsibility as well for their behavior. And then we have that relationship. And this is where they're doing that, able to do that sort of communication and listening and negotiation back and forth and work it out so that it's not all their way, but they're able to sort of collaborate with their peers a little bit, right? So it's not that side by side play, but it's more working together and maintaining those connections, right? So not like, well, we're just friends today and then we're not friends tomorrow or in the next hour even sometimes. But maintaining over time and more than just the same one or two people, right? So being able to take those skills and transfer those skills into different groups of children, right? So if I'm in a different situation and there's another group of children here, I'm able to take the skills that I have and I'm able to apply them here. I'm able to introduce myself. I'm able to figure out what's going on, what they're playing, how I might be able to interject myself and navigate that scenario, right?
Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about social anxiety, which some of you will be able to relate to. So, I mean, social anxiety, we all have a little bit of that, but it's when it gets in the way of interactions. They don't want to answer in class. They don't want to go up to people. They don't even want to order in a restaurant. Then, we know it's kind of getting in the way. It's that interaction with other people that makes you feel self-conscious. So being negatively judged, evaluated, so they avoid, right? Avoidance is self-reinforcing. It feels good in the moment. I don't go to the party. I won't get rejected, but it's a short-term solution for a long-term problem. The best way to deal with this is actually to do more. And we have to be their coach as far as getting them to practice and do those things and not jump in and rescue. So that being judged really makes them feel inadequate, inferior, embarrassed. So it leads to different things. So then they are not really keen to try it because they want to avoid feeling that way. And it's when those people become irrationally anxious in social situations. But when they're alone, they're okay, right? So that's when you know, okay, something might be up here. So people with a social anxiety, we're looking at like the things that stress them out would be being introduced to other people, being teased or criticized would be a big deal, being the center of attention. So even just going to a birthday party or having their own birthday party would be too stressful on them. Being watched while doing something, meeting people in authority, most social encounters, going around the room, when we go around the room to say, tell us what's your name, what's your favorite color, huge stressor. And friendships in general are very stressful because they feel like people don't like them, they're feeling judged, they're usually the pleasers, they're the followers, not necessarily the leaders, because they want to make sure everybody's happy. So we have a little here.
No. Oh, go.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I think we had a delay there. That's fine. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
it's okay. So we've just got a little situation. So we're hoping that you can respond. So the situation is Katie has moved to the neighborhood and is a new student at school. She's sitting at a lunch table where a group of kids are planning some activities for the weekend. She wants to be included, but doesn't know what to do. So do you think Katie should speak first or wait until someone in the group speaks to her? And what could Katie do to become part of the group? So these are the kinds of things that you could brainstorm with your child. So if you were doing this with your child, what are some of those things that maybe you would start with your kids to say, what would you do? What's the situation? So how could you coach this child? So you can just put it in the comments. Let us know. So you can answer any of the things. How can she start a conversation? What should she do? Okay. Hi, my name is Katie. Can I sit with you? Can I join you? Yeah, that's a good one. What else could they do? How can you encourage your child in this situation? How would you encourage your child in this situation? If they're telling you, I want to make friends with these people, I just don't know how. No suggestions? What can this child be going through right now that your child might be going through? Okay, maybe this is why we're struggling, right? We got to
Yeah.
some suggestions here, right? So
So
what's the
Katie, maybe
child?
you could move a little bit closer because she's feeling awkward, right? She hasn't connected with anybody, right? So how does she start to move a little bit closer to start to ease in, right? We call it easing in, right? To
Mhm.
start to get a little bit closer, hear what's going on, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
And sometimes
sorry,
it's just
sorry to interrupt. There is another
Oh,
comment. If you might need to scroll down.
oh,
okay, okay, yes. Listen to what the group is saying to think about a point of entry. Yes. So that's what I
yeah.
was referring to. So have that sort of easing in, right?
Mhm.
And that, that's that trying to join in.
Yeah. Yeah. So suggesting those things or talking to your kids about that gets the gets them problem solving. So you could use a scenario like this to ask them, what are some of those things? Because to go up and introduce yourself, um, for some kids, it would be a little bit awkward, right? Just to say, hi, I'm Michelle and I'm new here. Can I join in? Um,
Yeah.
would feel a little awkward. So it would be tough to maybe do that, but listening in and maybe having a comment or saying something, or maybe there's something that they can do or decide afterwards, like at recess. Maybe I'm going to go up to them, or maybe after school, I'm going to make sure I'm standing beside the one person that I'd like to talk to and say hi, or like, I like your sweatshirt, or that was really cool what you did in gym class. Like, I can't believe you got a 3-pointer like 3 times in a row. That was pretty cool, right? So, but getting them to kind of problem solve a little bit, right? Yes, look for a person they are more familiar with and ask them to introduce you to the group. Yeah, so these are good things, right? So it's getting that problem solving going.
Yeah, and it could be even afterwards, right? Like maybe she had somebody in her class, right? Like, hey, I heard you guys talking about, right? Um, I'm interested, in kind of joining, right?
Yeah. So this is how you can start those conversations with your kids and really get an understanding as to, do they know how to do this? Right? Because these are great answers, but does your child have these answers, and is the child problem solving? Because what we tend to do is we just give our input, and in the moment, the child's not going to remember what you said. So the more that you can try to facilitate and get the answers from them, and some of these questions would open up conversation for your child, because you really want to understand. For some kids, it's like, I don't know what I would do. I have no idea, or it's too uncomfortable. There's no way that I would do that. So you're saying that it's so uncomfortable that you wouldn't actually go up to your friends, anybody at all, and you'd rather sit alone than feel uncomfortable. Yep. It's like,
And I
okay.
want to just sort of address something too. It kind of leans a little bit to the other comment that was mentioned in the room earlier. And some of it is about interpretation of sort of
Mhm.
other children's responses, their facial expressions or tones of voice or reactions. Sometimes kids are not necessarily the best read of, sort of what might be going on or how they interpret a situation. They hear somebody laugh, they may assume that they were laughing about them. What exactly does being mean mean? Are they actually being mean? Were they just, distracted? Were they doing something else? Were they in the middle of something? So there may be some practice that may need to happen around understanding body language, facial expressions. Um, you can do some practicing by even, well, I mean, we used to suggest going to the mall and people watching, but you can do this by even watching videos and turning off the volume and really just paying attention to people's expressions, not necessarily their tone of voice, but their facial expressions, their body movements, and try and interpret what you think may be going on, and then play it back with the volume on and see if they were correct in what they were assuming was going on. Right? So it is a little piece of just sort of practicing how do I interpret those kinds of situations, because not necessarily am I correct in what I may be picking up.
Right. And the anxious child will assume the worst. They've looked at my shoes, they think they're dumb. I'm never wearing them again. Well, maybe they're looking at them because they're really nice. Like, where's the proof to say that those are bad shoes? So now you're not going to wear these shoes that you loved in the store, and now because one person looked at them, we're not going to wear the shoes again. So help me understand, where's the proof? How do you know for sure that's what the person was thinking? And if they were, how do we respond if they did say something to us?
So sometimes it is hard to join in, and this is sort of what we were talking about, that easing in, right? And these are those simple steps. So this is something that you'll be able to have as a reference to what are those steps to teach your child, right? So first of all, you've got to decide if they want to join in, right? And you have to decide whether you really want to participate or not, right? And then decide what to say. So can one or more person play? Do you mind if I come along? Do you have other ideas about what you could say, right? So sort of planning it out, thinking it out ahead of time, and then choose a good time. And when would you have the most success? Is it during a break in the activity, before it begins, or do you have other ideas? And how do you say it in a friendly way? Again, this is thinking about that body language, tone of voice, look on our face, and even just that sound can give people a message, right? Of, do I have a friendly attitude? Am I coming across in a friendly way? Am I coming across in a, like, I want to, invite them or join them or be part of that group? Or am I trying to be pushy, bossy, just kind of get in the way? I want to do things my way. They're doing it wrong. So how am I being interpreted by what I'm presenting with my body, right? And my tone of voice. So very, very important to go over that with your kids, because that's giving a very different message than what maybe they intend to convey.
Yeah, and this happens from having play dates, being around your kids, watching how they interact. It's really hard to know how they're responding or how people are responding to them when we haven't watched them engage. And usually one-on-one is a little bit different than in groups, so it's important to see that as well. So places to try are at school, at home, the neighborhood, the community, right? So what are they doing? How can they interact? How can they step out of their comfort zone and practice? And if they're struggling at school with kids, then where can they connect with kids somewhere else? Maybe children that they can relate to or have more in common with. We can do role playing at home and practicing and then stepping out of that. Sometimes these kids even struggle with their own siblings. So starting at home might be the first step. And then how do they transfer those skills and doing it often? Because especially for children that want to avoid, they don't want to do these things. They're very happy being at home in their room. So we have to do a little bit of that planning, right?
Hmm. Hmm. Again, this is just another little way of short form of sort of giving a roadmap to what we just talked about, right? So you want to watch, look carefully, think about it, listen, get more clues about what people are talking about, start to move yourself physically a little bit more closer to the group, and then start to ease in, right? Can I play? How do I make that connection, right? So this is just another way to think about it.
This is kind of cute too, where you actually start some conversation starters. I mean, we found this online, so it'd be pretty easy to do that. And it's just practicing. You can play the what if game. What if someone comes up to you and asks you about something? Or what if you ask to join in and they say no? How do you respond? What do you do? Because some children get so blocked that it doesn't go well. So now we walk around by ourselves. So helping them with the problem solving, helping getting to really figure out what their interpretation is, and then giving them some tools and ways that they can interact and feel like they've got something in their pocket to pull out, especially when they're feeling nervous.
So this is about just trying to put yourself in someone else's shoes, right? So you're called on to read a poem in class, and the teacher asks you to come to the front and read the poem. And when you look out at the group, you notice two kids in the back start whispering. And the girl sitting in the front row looks down at your shoes and back up at you. She has a smirk on her face. So what is it that you automatically think they're whispering about, and what is your interpretation of the girl in the front row? Anybody?
They are whispering about me reading the poem, and there is something wrong with my shoes. Yep. What else could it be? Let's try the other side. Yeah, they're whispering about something um, unrelated to me. The girl in the front row is smiling because she likes my shoes. Yeah. And someone was saying the smirk implies negativity. And this is what we said, but maybe it is a smile, right? So being able to see things from a different angle, and where is the proof and what possibly could it be? And do we need to know what everybody's thinking about us? And it's not in a negative way, but it's not all about you, right? Like, not everybody is fixated on you and your poem and what you're saying. We've got other things going on. And for kids, it's really tough because they do want to fit in. But this can help you with scenarios like this. If a child has a hard time telling their story, let's talk about somebody else and do that. So I'm noticing there's some questions about other things here. So my child does okay with other children, but gets overwhelmed when there's more than one. Um, Somebody else is saying if your child tries to join in and the kids respond, no, get lost. What is your advice? So,
So I was actually just saying that, sometimes children choose peer groups that are not necessarily the best peer group for them. And
Yes.
sometimes you have to reevaluate that. Like if you're trying to say, I mean, and I'm just using this as an example, that, like if I'm sort of like an average kid maybe that is more into, say, computers or whatever. But I really, really think the kids that are playing football and soccer are really cool, and I want to try to join in with them. Chances of me being successful are probably pretty slim because we just really don't have a lot in common, right, with one
Hmm.
another. So we have to try to find and reevaluate our peer groups too to see, are we picking the peer groups that match our interests, that match where we're at with our developmental level as well, because that can be an issue. If you have a child that has ADHD, they are generally functioning about 2 years behind socially. So,
Hmm.
if they're 9, they may not be, doing really well with kids their age, right? So, they may be having a much harder struggle to connect socially with children of their same age. But if you try to connect them up with maybe, say, kids that are a year younger, they may do better.
Right.
So it may take some evaluation.
The other thing too is that if the other children are saying no, are they saying no, get lost, you're a loser, or are they just saying no and your child's interpretation is that? Have you actually heard that and witnessed someone being that way? Because sometimes that's what we do, right? Or the kids will say, the teacher yelled at me, and you're in the room thinking, the teacher didn't yell at you. Like the teacher just kind of just was like maybe a little more direct, but it wasn't like she was screaming at you, but you were embarrassed and mortified. And so this is your interpretation. And like Sue said, if you continue going up to those people that you have nothing in common with, they might be saying, no, like you're not getting the point. And I think the
Yeah.
problem is that we expect that everybody includes our child, and that's just unrealistic, right? So it's picking something, people that you do have those connections with. If people continue start saying no, what really is going on there? Are they picking the wrong people? Can we help them find different people to hang out with? Sometimes they're saying no because we already have 10 people. We don't need another person. There's not enough, like we're playing soccer or something, and we can't have an uneven number or something like that. So it's really kind of digging a little bit deeper, having those play dates, watching how things are going, and really getting an understanding of where, the children are coming from. And then what do they do? If one group is saying no, what's the problem solving? Because then they're walking around by themselves, but there was a group of kids that they could have connected that was over here, but they're really stuck because they wanted to play with this group and they said no, and we're supposed to be nice to everybody, and these people are not being nice, so that's a problem. And then we kind of get stuck, right? So there is that reality that sometimes we're not going to be included in things, and we can validate our child and say that's really hard because you really tried and it didn't work out. So where else can you go, or who else can you spend some time with, right? See some other questions. So they can't seem to figure out how they can dominate the decisions about what to play, whose ideas get picked. Oh, so I mean, we're teaching assertiveness skills because we don't want them to dominate. We don't want them to be the aggressor, saying it needs to be my way only. But that's assertiveness skills and saying, so last time we played your game, next time can we play my game? Or can we start with yours and then we can play mine or whatever. So it's teaching them how to do a little bit of that back and forth, right?
Hmm.
Okay.
It's really tough sometimes to have to make a really accurate assessment of,
Mhm.
is my child struggling with social skills, or are they just being so like are they just lagging with that social development, and they may just be socially awkward right now? And that can be really tough for a parent, because they see them and they're struggling. They may be struggling with their playmates. They're struggling at school. Maybe they're struggling in some kind of activities that they're trying to join in with. Um, because maybe they just don't seem to get along as easily as other children do. But we can role play things with them at home. We can try to set up play dates. So it may be that they really struggle with a larger group, and maybe we can try to have like a couple of kids, maybe one or two, come over from school and set up some opportunities to have those play opportunities for them to practice in smaller settings, and then maybe graduate out to like a smaller park or a backyard, or you go there, they come here, and then you gradually sort of ease them out into larger and larger sections in larger areas of play opportunities, right? Because it could just be that they may be socially awkward and struggling, and if they're put in too large of a situation, like a playground or a team sport, it's just too overwhelming for them. And I can't manage everybody's emotions. I can't manage all the rules, and I can't fit in. I just seem like I'm just like the odd man out all the time. So do a lot of that practicing with them. Try to sort of hone it back and do some of that more sort of two-on-one, like groups of three, five is better. You want awkward numbers. You don't want even numbers, right? And do some practicing and set the stage.
Yeah. And just some insight from one of the parents saying that her child is intense. So even if it's happy, there's a lot of intensity, which can overwhelm kids. And that's part of that emotional regulation. Um, and learning to be able to turn it down, but being self-aware. So that's going to be point of performance for you as the
Mm-hmm.
parent. Maybe have a code word or a code signal, because this is common with younger kids. As they start getting older, the kids are better able to regulate their emotions, so it's not as big as an issue, right? So just something to think about too, right? That we're practicing having a code word, and how can we take a break? How can we calm down a little bit, right?
You want to explain the shoes?
Yeah. Okay. So, um, this is another opportunity, and again, we just found shoes on the internet. I think Sue liked the red ones. They were her favorite. Um, but let's take a look at different people's shoes and what is it like in their life. So it opens up your perspective. You've got children that are very empathetic, that maybe can give you a lot of insight, and other kids that maybe are having a hard time. So kind of struggling with being able to connect with other people is not being very perceptive, right? So when we can't see what's going on there, or if our interpretation, like Sue said, is just one interpretation, but can we open that up a little bit, right? To say that everybody is just a jerk and everybody's mean in this world and I'm better off in my room by myself. Wow, like that's pretty harsh to think that. And you're saying that there's no good people in this world? Like no one's going to give you you're not going to give anybody a chance. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about what that means to you, and what that looks like, right? So, and again, it's these kinds of activities, because when we ask children, sometimes point blank, tell me, they're like, I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about, or I can't remember. So this can open up conversation to see really where your child is at and where their perception is. Because essentially what we want you to do, we want you to be a parent coach, right? So playing these kind of games, doing these kinds of things, opening up conversation is what we want you to do, right? You want to continue on with that?
Sure. So just again, yeah, gaining that understanding by, helping you to be able to be that coach, right? So you're observing your child, you're going to be working on some of these things that we're talking about, right? So you're supporting them, you're practicing. And again, this is a lot of that. You're watching those videos, you're setting up that point of performance situation like Michelle was talking about, or doing the smaller play groups like I was suggesting, right? So providing those
Mhm.
opportunities to practice outside of the home is a really great opportunity, right? And it really is that practice, I hate to say it, it's not really that practice makes perfect, but practice makes it easier, right?
Mhm.
And you're going to provide that ongoing feedback, right? So do it with them first, right? Do it with them, coach them through the steps, and then eventually let them try to launch it and then give them the feedback. This went really well. I liked how you looked at me. You didn't have your face buried down. You kept eye contact with me. You smiled when you spoke to me. Give them those kinds of feedback. If they talk really, really, really quiet, I can barely hear you, and blah, 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 and really like that, nobody's going to hear what they have to say and they're just going to move on, right? So talk about helping them use their voice as well. So giving them feedback about all of those things can be very important. Helping them
Mhm.
have those topics like the conversation starters. Again,
Mhm.
another really important piece to help you to sort of use in that homework sort of area, right?
Yeah. So just maybe to add to that, so if you can answer this question, there was a question about, so how do you tell your child which things to work on without making them feel self-conscious?
It's really the whole thing, right? It's all about, you know what, we're just going to work together, right? We're working together. We're figuring it out. And it's
Mhm.
it's all about pulling the whole thing together. We're helping figure out, how do we make more friends? How do we get to know people, right? It's the same thing for adults when parents have to go somewhere and meet somebody new. This is what I have to learn how to do. I have to be able to learn how to introduce myself and say hello, and I have to be able to look at people when I talk to them. So it's all about how you present the package to them. I think if we
Mhm.
present it to them where they feel awkward and uncomfortable, then
Or you're
then they're going to take
shaming,
it
or
as
yeah.
going to take it as a shaming sort of self-conscious way. But if you make it a game, and you're doing it like through dinner, or have little cards and you're acting out emotions and you're looking at body language, it becomes interactive. Same thing with
Mhm.
conversation starters, right? You can have a partial sentence and everybody can draw a card. Everybody participates. Same thing
Mhm.
with watching a video. It doesn't have to be just them. You guys do it too. You shut off the volume, everybody participates. What do we think is happening? So everybody's doing it together, and then they don't feel like it's just them. These are skills that everybody needs to use, right?
Right. I think the thing too with this is that you want to be working with your child because they notice that it's not going well. So we are
That's a
letting
good
them know
point.
this isn't going so well, or I'm noticing that you're struggling with friends, or you're coming home every day saying, I don't fit in, or this isn't going well. So, what does that look like as far as helping them? And it's like, okay, so you're feeling stuck. I'm not quite sure how to support you. Let's look at why things didn't go well, or let's have a play date so I can kind of watch. And you might have to facilitate things. Some children are just impulsive and will be like, oh, Sue, you got a unibrow. And it's like, that was an
They
inside
do?
thought. You don't.
Do?
But that's an inside thought, right? And you just
This,
needed
this
to
is a
let that person
point.
know, right? So,
Really good
some
point.
will have code words. Like one parent has the word filter. So she uses the word filter, which I think is great. So the child in that, like when they do something like that, they're like, oh, I have to take this back. But that's a skill to be able to say, ugh, I misstepped. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. That was rude. Being able to do that is hard. And then there's the other piece where they're not speaking and they think, well, it's fine. I'll just stay at home with you every Saturday night. It's okay. And they're struggling, right? So we can say what our concerns are and hopefully get them on board, because for some kids, being at home all the time, it's just avoidance and it feels okay. So
Mhm.
it can be a
Mhm.
little bit tough, but hopefully we can get them on board.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we've talked about this. It's basically just setting them up for
Action.
success, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, this is just part of that model, right? You're introducing the skill, you're coming up with the plan, right? So, what are the steps involved? It's no different than learning a skill like how to play basketball or ride a bike, right? How am I going to teach them how to ride the bike? For so long, I'm not forever going to walk behind them holding on to the back of the bike. And the same thing, if I'm teaching them how to shoot hoops, right? I'm not doing it for them. I've got to teach them how to hold the ball, how to dribble the ball, how to stand back, how to shoot, how far away to stand. So we've got to introduce it, we've got to figure out the plan, we have to have the practice, and then we have to have a review. So it's a skill like
Mhm.
any other skill, and it's not something
Right.
that just comes naturally to everybody.
Right. And I think it's just using everyday life. Like if I come
It is.
home and my kids are like, you know, telling me about their day, or maybe I started talking about my day and then they interrupt me to be like, look outside, there's a black dog walking by, or look at how cute that, or like they went on and on about their day. And it's like, you, you haven't even asked me about my day. Like, did you notice that you didn't even ask me about my day, or, whatever. So you can, but it's how you say it. If you say, why would you do that? Or, you're so rude. You didn't even ask me, or stop interrupting me. Instead, it's having those cues and those signals to say, this is what's not appropriate. This is not okay. But sometimes what happens is that we just let it happen because we don't want to deal with the fight, right? So here's
And again,
another,
it's a
yeah,
diagram, yeah, that
yeah.
that introduces how to do that. And we talked a little bit about this point of performance. I'm just aware of the time, right?
Hmm.
So this is about that sort of in the moment, right? So this is your first steps. How is it going? Giving them that feedback. So this is that coaching piece that you're doing. You want to explain this?
Yeah. So when we're in these moments, so this is, there we go.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So teachable moments are not at the tip of the iceberg when it's not going well, right? So we want to do it around here, and with our kid. Sorry, there's a
There's
crisis.
the,
Sorry, you quick enough. It's probably a black
the
dog
accident.
outside walking by. Um, so those teachable moments when the child is in the thick of a meltdown or things aren't going well, we want to try to catch it a little bit ahead of time, or have that code word or that code signal. And practicing on a regular basis is really important, right? You have to train the brain. And for some children, this doesn't come easily depending on where they're at. And if it doesn't go well, then they feel like it's a failure. So you can just validate the fact that you did really well, you did all the right things, it just didn't turn out that great. So let's do some problem solving. But in the moment, we want to try to catch it before it gets to the tip, right?
So then I mentioned I just wanted to say some other workshops that might be helpful for you guys. The impulsivity, we have how to cope with your impulsive child. We have parenting your anxious child, which is multiple sessions. We have
I'm
emotions
shy.
in motion. So we have lots of other stuff that might be of help to you. You can certainly take a look on our website, and also please make use of the Your Space Hamilton. There's lots of other pre-recorded stuff that's on here and workshops that you might be able to find some good information from to help you as well with your kids. And thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for all the questions. That was great. Really
Yeah, it was
helps
very
us.
good.
Thank you, Sue and Michelle. I'm gonna.
Thank you, Louise.
You're welcome. We're out of practice with some of the individual sessions, but this is oh yes, here's some important local contact information. And we also have the resource page for today's session, so we'll get some links and make sure that you can connect directly to the other groups and workshops that Sue and Michelle run, as well as any of the recorded archived things that are on Your Space. And we've got our feedback survey there as well. All of this will come to you in a follow-up email. I know one of the articles that I had been recently looking at and have already misplaced. Here we go. I was browsing Social Thinking's website, which let me try and put a message to everybody here. Which came across an article that was specifically about making and keeping friends. So I thought, oh, this is very timely. So I'm just going to drop that as a message to everyone in the chat. And you can grab that. It was an interesting one, although it's always a little bit more meaningful and relevant when you're able to ask questions and get feedback directly about your family's challenges around building friendships. So thank you again, everyone. We do hope to see you in future sessions. We'll make sure that you have information about things that are upcoming there too. Good night.
Thanks very much, everybody.